Round 22, Team List Tuesday, guys. In this one, I'm just going to be going through, obviously, a couple of the changes that have been made in this one and really just pointing out a few of the potential last trade-ins that you can make for your side. So let's get straight into it with the Panthers v. the Storm. And with the Panthers, I'm actually fairly interested in Jamin Salmon. Sean O'Sullivan, obviously a solid one as well, but you can get Salmon at that cheaper price. If you have maybe 3 to 5 trades left, you could potentially do a little downgrade from one of your 350, 400, 450 guys to a Salmon, potentially play him and eat him if you'd like to. Okay, that was a terrible dad joke. But we could upgrade a little bit elsewhere. It could be a McInnes. It could be a Tamalolo. There's a few guys that you could look to move up to some other potential guys that are around that 750. And that's probably the best way I reckon you could use those two trades this week. So Salmon is one of those guys. Stephen Crichton's a slightly interesting one, given he's really cheap now and he has the goal kicking back for the rest of the season. So just have a quick look at him as well and see if you think that he might be able to be serviceable for you at that awkward price, because that's probably the biggest one at the moment for anyone who you have as an injury, whether it's Jerome Hughes, who is out for looks like anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks. So that mid-range is where we need to look. If you do need someone to come in your 17 for Hughesy, for example, and you can't hold him, just for the fact that you've got like a Palacia or something like that who's going to get you anywhere between 15 or 5 a couple of weeks ago and like a 25. So that's something to think about with that type of trade. So on the really, Isaiah Yeo is obviously a clear top option as well. He's 4th best mid at the moment. So if you're looking for someone a little bit under 800k, then Isaiah Yeo would be your man. Eisenhuth starts again this week, same with Chris Smith. With the Storm Boys, we have Cammy Munster back into the 6th position. Very fair that this had to happen with Hughesy being out, so Cooper Johns will retain his spot, and he should score fairly solidly. I wouldn't expect a 55 every week, but he will do a job for you. Nick Meaney is back in that 1 jersey, but we won't look at picking him up. Justin Olam is back also. In the forwards, Harry Grant is probably the only one that you should look at picking up. He had a really, really good game last week, and not expecting him to do that on a weekly basis, but up against the Panthers this week, let's see if he can keep those missed tackles down. Brandon Smith, another one of those mid-range guys that you could potentially look at. So just have a check out of his stats and go from there. Warriors v Dogs. So Warriors side of the ball, we see Josh Curran back in the 13 role, so he should be solid. Aiken is back in on the edge role, so in number 11, which is great. If you're looking to keep him, a hold of him, that would be delightful. Dejan Arce is back in 6, and Egan is in the 9 jersey. For the Dogs, only ones that are of interest are obviously Matty Burton, and I think personally Jackson Torpany is an interesting one there. Got a really big score a couple of weeks ago, and then the 42 this week. So I still think that he has an opportunity to average close to 50 if he maintains that position. We see Raymond in the 13, so Tavita Pangai Jr. is out this week. It looks like it should only be the 1 week, so the only issue here is what's going to happen next week. Will Torpany go back to the bench? Will Raymond go back into the edge? So if you're looking at Jackson, just be aware that that is a minor issue. Could be a big issue. An issue that you have to face anyway. We move down to Eels v the Bunnies there, and Dylan Brown's obviously looks like he's going to be a solid pick for the rest of the year. Comes up against the Bunnies, who I think they're going to have a pretty tough task, and it'll be a nice close game in this one. I think very similar to what happened a couple of weeks ago with the Bunnies v the Sharks, to be around that 20 points apiece, and see who can win it at the end there. So Brownie's going to be solid. Reedy, another one of those mid-range guys that's just been terrible. And Shawnee Lane is definitely an option if you want to plug him in for the rest of the year. Now that I've said this, I think that he's going to average about 48, which is usually how it goes. Isaiah Papali'i, obviously a gun to have in your side as well. But Reedy, there is an option this week. We can do something with him. We can move him on. And we'll speak about it when we get to the Cowboys. But there's definitely an option if you need another hooker there heading into round 22. So for the Bunnies, we have Latrell obviously coming off a big game. There's a chance that he doesn't do that this week. Remember, he's going to be that 80-odd, then 30-odd. So don't try and chase his points. Just be aware that the average you're going to get from him will end up being somewhere in the 50s, and you'll be up and down in terms of his scoring for that last 4 rounds. With them trying to make it as close to the top 4 as possible, I think he's going to step up nicely. But remember, there's games that he's going to have that lower one because of those run meters. He doesn't get those tackle breaks and offloads that we need from him. Okay, we look down the forwards. Damien Cook, obviously a top gun to select. Colin Matungi and trying to get Murray in would be the smartest option as quickly as possible if you have any options to do that, any trades available. Maybe it's going down to Salmon and up to Cam Murray. You can potentially play both of them in your starting side. Roosters v the Cowboys. This will be a fun one at the SCG there. A very, very good game, and I imagine a very close one. Teddy and Manu, still great options. I think they're going to have a fun time of it on the weekend. Hopefully, it looks like there's going to be no rain. There's a bit of rain about this week, not too much, but maybe a little bit or enough to cause a few issues, but we'll see how it goes on the weekend. We have, obviously, Nat Butcher and Crichton being great scorers last week. Again, we're going to see if Crichton can do it again, but he's not someone that you should be on your chopping block anymore. He was last week. Now he's not after that 79. So hopefully he can keep those run meters up and get his attacking stats from there. If not, just that base around that 50 would be good with the 35 tackles, 150 meters. Butcher loves getting in the try scorers realm as well, along with the base that he usually provides. So he should be good for a 50 average from here on in. For the Cowboys, Holmes, Drinkwater, still solid options. Just be aware that Holmes, he finally had that lower game, so it might stay. He might go back to exactly where he was. So reverting back to the averages, he was hitting close. He was hitting pretty much 65 every week, but I still think he's a 40 to 45 kind of type player. So if you have other options in the centers, whether it's Manu and Burton, I would go for them before I would go for Holmes, considering this will be a tougher game as well. But the one I want to talk about is Ruben Cotter. So back in the starting team this week. My main issue now and worry is that Jason Taumalolo probably doesn't get big minutes, if we're being honest. Somewhere around that 50 to 55 will be where he's at. I think that's going to cause some issues for his scoring. So if you are one of those guys with Reid Marnie, I think you can try and move to a Cotter or try and move to a Robson, considering they're both in that hooking position. Cotter there, 53 minutes last week. I'd say at a minimum he will receive that. It could be closer to 60, but you had 183 meters, I believe, in the 53 minutes there, which was a tremendous effort. And I think he's someone that could get those big minutes. The main issue here is the interchange when they have 4 forwards on that bench. So Gilbert will get that 50 odd. Taumalolo probably the same. Cotter maybe 60, and then you've got a split. Probably they're looking at close to 50 minutes for Leilua and then 30 for the other 3 guys. So just be aware that guys like Hess will probably get that 35-40 as well, and they have to split those minutes around that. So he's definitely the sneaky option this week, Cotter, who's going to be close to that 700k mark, and hopefully could do a great job for you. We move to the Tigers v the Sharks on 5:30 on Saturday Arvo there. And really, only ones you want to look at in that Tigers team are Adam Dewey and Joe and Gowie. Some special mentions to Seyfarth and Tuolangi. We have Luke Garner back, but he isn't able to make his way even onto that bench. So with how Seyfarth is going, they're happy with his efforts, and I think they're going to, looks like they're going to keep him there for the rest of the year. So if you need that cheaper guy, or if you picked him up last week, you did really well. He didn't obviously score crazily, incredibly well, but still a solid score for you. And Tuolangi's been improving as well. But I still think it's probably a little bit late to pick up him. But Joe or Adam Dewey are probably the 2 ways to go. Whenua Pole, who scored well in that 13 role last week, he moves back to the bench. So still probably looking at 35 to 40 minutes anyway, just with the guys they have on the bench. It's only really Peachy that is well known on the bench. Freebarn had a big game last week with big minutes. So maybe they split that between them and go from there. But Sharky, so Con Tracy's out. Lockie Miller heads onto the wing like he played last week. So interesting to see where Matt Ikabalu is and what's happening with him. So they've got him in the 22 jersey. So yeah, definitely not in favour here in Shark territory like he was at the Roosters. So maybe it's a defensive thing. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, Lockie Miller gets his opportunity on the wing. So I think that's looking to get him in there by any means possible. So Braden Trindle had a great game last week. I wouldn't be looking to pick him up though. Heinze, still a great captaincy option against the Tigers, considering they weren't able to beat the Knights last week. So still a great opportunity to captain him this week. We lose McInnes to the bench, unfortunately. And you look at a 4-forward bench there again. McInnes looking close to that 50 minutes like he got last week. So again, anywhere between that 45 and 50, I think is going to be his scoring. And if you have that opportunity to potentially upgrade him, to someone who can score 60 plus, whether it's Murray, Payne Haas, these types of players, I think that would be the way to go. I wouldn't be sideways swapping him for someone that could average close to 50 though. Just make it worthwhile if you are going to move him on to someone else. Because it's him, Taumalolo, these types of players that I think you can potentially make a big upgrade out of, but it can also be a bit of a waste of a trade if you don't go right to those top guys. Okay, so Finucane's back, and that's what's caused that one. We move to Broncos v the Knights. Guys to think about, Reynolds again had a bit of a lighter one. Payne Haas still a great option this week, that mid-50 score, but the 65 minutes is the big one, the most important thing that we're looking at there. For the Knights, Clemmer is back, and we lose Barnett for a week, so there's no real reason as to why Barnett's out. I haven't said anything yet, but it just says he's out, replaced by Matt Croker. So if you do own Matty Croker, then he could potentially be one that you could play this week. If you have a Hughesy as like your 17th man and have a Matt Croker, then maybe you could play him and hope for some 40, 50 minutes because he has scored well in some decent minutes off the bench in the past. We saw Brayley had a decent score, and Brodie Jones, if you have him, both of them could be played, but I wouldn't be picking any of them up. Raiders v Dragons, we have Xavier Savage back, which is great for anyone who is looking for a wing fullback to play, and you have him there. You could slot him in this week up against the Dragons. Could be an okay score for him, somewhere around that 40 mark. Seems pretty normal and what we could expect. Adam Elliott, still great, so if you got him, keep holding on and keep playing him. And for the Dragons, we see Michael Molo in the 13 role, so he could get about that 40 minutes as well. We'll see how that works out, but you'd expect somewhere around that 40 at a minimum, and he has had a pretty solid PPM in that couple of games that he has played, so just be aware of him. And Benny Hunt had a decent game. We see Jack Bird still, unfortunately, in the centres, which he doesn't score as well, unfortunately. And then Titans v Eagles to round this one out. We see Aaron Clark back to the 9 role, which isn't as good for his scoring as we know, as he started there for the first, more than the first half of the season. So if you have him, it's a bit of a pain. Do you try and hold him? Probably do. I think he still plays some big minutes with the bench that they have with Marzu in there, and then 3 forwards. Who would they pop in there to that 9 position? Probably no one at this point. I doubt that they're going to do anything with that. So yeah, you probably save for a high minutes game, and hopefully you can still stay really busy. Dave Fafita, looking for a big game out of him. Tino as well. Both of those guys are probably due for a big one. Tino solid last week. Dave, it's ready time for him to get a 70 or 80, I believe, if you own him. And then for the Manly side of the ball, if you have a lot of these guys that have been slightly underperforming, the Kohlers, the Garricks, even DCE, for example, this is the game where I think they need to step up. Last game of the round against the Titans, it could be a little bit of a make or break for a few teams. I know my head-to-head squad has Garrick, Kohler, and DCE starting, so very important for them and my team there to really finish off the week well. And have a great big score. Anywhere around 1100 would be nice for our teams this week. But I wish you guys all the best of luck in making those trades. But yeah, just have a look at those guys that I mentioned. I think there's some interest there, and just see how seeing how it fits your squad. Subscribe, guys. I appreciate you guys for being here, and we'll catch you in the next bunch of videos. The Scoop one, we're going to be going through a lot of your questions and also analyzing a few teams. So get them in ASAP, and we'll go from there. See you later, guys.